Hello and welcome to another episode of 1000 Actually Fun Books, where we review books and hope we discover the best of fun escapist books of all genres. Today we're reviewing the book Still Life by Louise Penny. This is a murder mystery, a traditional murder mystery. When you think of murder mysteries with a detective trying to solve a murder, it's not terribly suspenseful or not a thriller, just a classic murder mystery. And it was pretty good. So the plot is that in this little village in Canada, an elderly woman is found shot, just laying on the sidewalk. And everybody's like, it must have been a hunting accident, because there's a lot of hunters around the area, and this is hunting season. It must have been an accident. And so they go investigate, like, is it a murder? Was it an accident? And who in the village or around the village could have possibly killed her? Who is not standing up and saying, it was me? So anyway, the investigation progresses throughout the book until finally, of course, the killer is found and, righteousness restored and all that happy stuff. So, just what you would expect. Okay, things I liked. So I liked the plot of this story. The murder mystery itself was good. I did not guess about the murderer at the end. I was just as surprised as everybody, in the book, or as you would hope to be in a murder mystery. But this is the kind of murder mystery where the author does sprinkle clues throughout. So if you knew who it was and then went back to the beginning and read through, you could probably spot the clues as you go. But you don't necessarily find out until the end what those clues were. So the author did a great job with that. The mystery itself was good. All the red herrings were good. About halfway through the book, somebody's arrested for the murder, and because it's only halfway through the book that it's obviously not going to be that person. But that just gives you an example of one of the many red herrings in the book. So that was fun. So the plot itself was very good, very well written. The setting and scenery was also good. It was kind of philosophical in a lot of ways, people musing on the idea of loss and death and the idea of stillness, like not progressing in life, no ambition to change for the better. Things like that. The author will go on kind of have a discussion between some characters about some philosophical ideas. But it's not so deep that, you get bogged down in that. So the author did a good job with that. Okay, beyond the plot, I did like our characters. So our main character is Chief Inspector Gamache, and he has a couple of supporting characters. So his I don't know even what you would call it, his sub-inspector, the lieutenant, I have no idea. Somebody that went with him, along with a protege or a trainee that he's with, along with a bunch of other little side characters that you don't get to know very well. And our main character did a good job being a kind of person that, if you were in trouble with the police, you'd want him to come and talk to you, because he was kind and gentle with all the suspects. So, he didn't raise his voice, he didn't get mad, he didn't contradict, he just kind of was like, well, tell me about that. And, oh, you think it's an accident? Well, probably it was an accident. That kind of gentle leading where the people want to talk with him. And I kind of liked that as a character. He was also gentle with his subordinates. So the trainee that comes with him comes across as a pretty not nice character. She's very deluded on her own importance, so to speak, her own skill. It comes across as both arrogant and insensitive. And Gamache does a good job in this story trying to be kind to her, okay, I'm going to still give her more chances. I'm going to try and teach her how she can change and point out what she did wrong, that kind of stuff. And his other subordinate is like, you got to send her back. You got to fire this person. She's just no good. And in the end, you can kind of see how it's just not working. I won't give it away on how that works out, but an example of that particular character, the trainee, she's been having all these problems, and she looks in a mirror, and the sign says, the problem is right here, or something like that. Where the obvious implication is, if you have a problem and you're looking in this mirror, you're supposed to say, you are the problem. But she looks at that and reads it, and she turns around and starts searching everything that's in the reflection of the mirror, trying to find the problem. Because it's obvious that it never crosses her mind that it's her. And then later on in the story, when she has other problems, she thinks back to that moment and realizes the problem was Gamache. Again, never her. She is a character that cannot comprehend that she is got a problem. So anyway, our main character, Gamache, treats her well despite all these character flaws and conflict, interpersonal conflict and such. So anyway, so I like him as a character. I could definitely see wanting, excuse me, wanting to read more stories with this inspector and being perfectly comfortable following along as he solves cases. So I like that. The final thing that I really liked about this, so again, the setting is a small town in Canada, and is really very distinctly Canadian. And that was really interesting. It's not this generic small town that could be anywhere. It could be Britain or Florida or, I don't know, anywhere. Instead, it has a very distinct Canadian flavor. So, for example, they kept talking about Thanksgiving. This whole mystery takes place around Thanksgiving. And I kept going, okay, Thanksgiving. And so me, an ignorant American, I'm thinking it's going to be November. And then they talk about brisk October air. I'm sitting there going, October? Is this an editorial error? And that's when I realized that this wasn't American Thanksgiving, it's Canadian Thanksgiving, which is at a different time set. They also bring up things like, this is in or near Quebec, and that kind of tension, the political tension, the racial tension almost between the English-speaking and the French-speaking peoples of that time. It kind of comes up a couple of times about a difference of language and language barriers and cultural clashes, that kind of thing. So I liked that. I liked that the setting wasn't just generic somewhere. It had a personality because it was in a very particular location. So that was nice too. All right, some things that are in between like and dislike would be all the other characters. So all the suspects. Now this is appropriate. You don't always like all the characters. And I would consider that totally legitimate for a murder mystery. You're not supposed to like all the characters because they're supposed to all be suspects of a murder, right? They all have dirty little secrets that don't want to come out. Things like that the inspector needs to take a shovel and a pick and dig through all the backstories. So that's kind of just in between. I didn't like all the characters, but you're not supposed to like all the characters. So things I disliked. There were only really two things about this book that I didn't really like. One is a warning. So right at the beginning, there's some homophobic slurs, some harassment kind of thing, which some people don't like. But the book condemns it. Like, all the villagers, get up and say those teenagers that were doing that kind of thing were in the wrong. So it's a warning that if you can't handle that, don't read the book. The second one is the humor in the book. I didn't always mesh with the humor. There will be something going along, and maybe it was just because it was very dry humor, but I could tell that it was supposed to be humorous. The people are having a little bit of banter, and it just didn't click with me. I just didn't find it funny. So the humor in the book is there, but it didn't flow well. It didn't mesh with me. So those are the only really two things that I would give as a negative of the book. So overall, I really liked it. I thought it was an excellent murder mystery for somebody who wants just this classic detective story. And so I recommend it. I highly recommend it. It's going on my list of best of books. Okay, part 2, what I'm going to do next is Cinder by Marisa Meyer. So this book, with Cinder, it's clearly a take off of Cinderella. So my first thought would be, this is a fantasy romance. But Cinderella, the thing that makes this book unique is Cinderella is a cyborg. So I think instead of a fantasy romance with fairy tale godmother and magic pumpkins and all that kind of thing, I think it's a sci-fi romance. So that should be fun for my next book. I hope that you will join me on that, and thank you for watching.